Good morning and welcome to the Carpool Chat. From our house to the State House, the commute that nobody ran for. I am joined with my friends, Representative Rachel Rorks and Representative Sarah Stalker. I am State Representative Tina Bojanowski. The three of us ride back and forth to Frankfort and have lots of conversations. And what we want to bring to you in these chats is just a little bit of the key information we've talked about, a little bit of fun, a little bit of our personal world, how we're handling being in the middle of session. So let's start and talk about music. So look in the future, there might be an official Carpool Chat playlist, but Sarah, tell us a little bit about what you may have been listening to back and forth to Frankfort.
Well, there's a variety of things. First of all, you should know that anytime Tom Petty comes on the radio, we're going to turn it up. I also do love to drive just a little bit faster when we have a good song on the radio. And sometimes we're just trying to actually get into Frankfurt a little faster. But we've been talking a lot about songs that have political undertones to them or very overt political tones to them. And we've been exchanging some of those that not everybody knew about. And so one that I brought up that some people might be surprised to hear is a song called Handlebars by Flowbot. So that might be worth somebody listening to for the first time or kind of recycling if it's something you haven't heard in a while. It's pretty intense, especially there towards the end.
Rachel?
What's funny sometimes when we see the generational gaps between Sarah and I when it comes to music that we like or don't like. And Handlebars for me was just I can ride my bike with no handlebars was just like a thing that we used to say in grade school to each other like ongoingly. So like, I can't get it out of my head. But at the same time, I like started playing Don Henley's Dirty Laundry. And I was like, this is one of the greatest Don Henley songs. And she's like, I just love your like a wide variety and taste in music. But if you play something pop, I'm always going to be into it.
Right.
I love a boy band. I love the Backstreet Boys, and I don't believe that Sarah thinks Backstreet's back.
I'm not a supporter.
We're going to move on. So I shared with you all this morning that I actually have an Amazon playlist that I keep for each session. And one that I added recently was Meghan Trainor's All About the Bass. Because of the relevance for Chair Petrie talking about how funds that were appropriated in the last cycle are assumed to be in the base. So we've said that so many times. Is it in the base? Is it in the base? So
and when he said it on the floor, I literally thought he was making a reference and joke to the song, but then I was like, no, I don't think so. But I still want to ask him about it. At least let him know.
So speaking about the budget, we did yesterday, and it was a really long debate, pass House Bill 500 out of the House. So it has so much is in the budget bill. So we're just going to touch on a couple of items that maybe are key to what you look at through your lens. So, Rachel?
Well, I'm always asking for increased waiver slots for our Medicaid waivers for our disability community. So home and community-based waiver, Michelle P., supports for community living, acquired brain injury. Those are really important to me, my family, and many people in Kentucky. So the good thing about the budget bill is that there are increased waiver slots. I'm so grateful. But also, Medicaid as a whole still has some dollars missing, and that's really concerning for me.
Mm-hmm. Sarah?
I'm always looking for our kids that are in foster care. So as a former foster parent myself, I know for years we have had so many challenges with funding and infrastructure. There's so many challenges just around foster care in general, but really making sure that people have the funds they need to care for these individuals, specifically for kids that are in out-of-home care, right? So the kids that might be in residential facilities, kids that might be in like high acute facilities, that there's a substantial cost to those to care for those kids. And so I'm still not clear if we have all of the money that we need for these kiddos. So I'll be doing some additional looking into and asking questions with the chairman about that.
Right. And I looked at the budget through the lens of public education. And I think the biggest celebration for state employees as a whole is that the original bill had a cap of 5% per year on state employer contributions to state employee health insurance, which would have shifted the cost either to the employee or reduced benefits. That language, so we had what's called a House Committee substitute that we received on Monday evening for the Tuesday meeting. Right. And, you know, that's a short amount of time to have to go through and figure out what's actually in the budget. But that language was removed. The SEEK funds were increased by just under 1% in the substitute and 3.5% for the second year. So that's a move forward. It's just not clear and remains to be seen if that's going to be enough to offer the pay raises for educators. So there's language in the bill that suggests that districts use the extra money they've been appropriated for pay raises. But what's problematic is that we've got SEEK transportation, which is only paying about 81% of transportation. So I'm going to be watching real closely to see if the Senate adds in more money for SEEK transportation. As a whole, it's pretty stable public education budget. But you know, who knows what's going to happen in the Senate. Yep. Let's talk a little bit about House Bill 1, Sarah. So we passed that bill yesterday, right?
Was it? So. Yes.
Yes. Yes, the days are blending together. So yes, yesterday. Was it? No, it was Tuesday.
Oh my.
I'm so sorry. This is welcome to the Carpool Chat.
We're at day 36.
What day of the week it is.
But that is one of the challenges,
Yes.
is that things move so quickly around here.
That's right.
And depending if this is something that you're hearing in committee and then on the floor, or if you end up getting called back to a committee
Right.
for a committee substitute. So there's just so much movement. And so let's talk about actually some concern that I had with HR 1. So just to start with, or excuse me, House Bill 1. What House Bill 1 does is it's basically asking states to opt in and participate in a federal tax credit. So if you were to give a $1,700 contribution donation to a 501c3 organization that specifically will get those funds to help from an education standpoint for students, then that money gets taken away from your income, right? So these aren't state dollars that we're dealing with, which has been really a point of contingency
Right.
in the past here about making sure that we don't have state dollars going towards private education. But I want to talk about the process and how quickly it moved. So House Bill 1 was filed on the House floor just on Friday the 19th. Thursday the 19th. And then it had its first reading, which literally was just like calling it by its
Right.
title, right? That happened the following day on Friday the 20th. Then we got the weekend. We come back on Monday. It had a second reading. So that was the 23rd. And then you're on A&R and
Correct.
you all got pulled into a session, right? Or a committee meeting right after upon adjournment.
Oh.
And there was the committee substitute, right, that was put in place for it. And
Correct.
then by Tuesday morning, we're voting on this bill. So I lay all of that out just to show the speed in which things went. And so one of the things that I did was I made a motion to table a bill. And so what does that mean? Really, I did that because there was no reason to rush this process. The committee substitute that you had access to as a member of A&R wasn't even made public on the website. So
Right.
your general public isn't even able to see what changes we are making. And here we are voting on the House floor.
Right.
So I wanted to table it, gives us the chance to come back to it. But just to say, you know what, we need to slow down. People were not a fan of that idea. Shocker. So that motion did not pass.
Right. And then just a little bit more, because I voted differently than I would have had we been doing a scholarship tax credit for state dollars. So if I were in Congress, which I will never be in Congress, but if I were in Congress, I would have adamantly voted against this bill. But it's a done deal. Congress voted for this bill. So the question is, how can opting in as a state lead us to better supporting our public education students. And I dug deep, I read the federal law, I read suggested regulations. There are not regulations for it in federal government nor the state yet. And the more I read, the more I realized how much money we could pull from the federal government, from our taxes, into supporting public education students in the state. And quite honestly, I don't trust the federal government right now. And I'd rather have my money supporting a student in Jefferson County than paying for ICE or a war in Iran. Mm-hmm. So, you know, sometimes we'll take votes that aren't always aligned. Yeah. And I have gotten feedback from a lot of educators who are frustrated that I voted for this bill. But my job is going to be to change the frame and to make sure that agencies, 501c3s, are created that can exclusively support public ed students.
Yeah, right. And that's the catch, is it can be a benefit if those organizations are in place. The question, I think, that some folks who are really like against this bill in particular for our state is the question of like, how much of these funds are still going to go to private schools? Right. And does it outweigh the benefit that it would have on public education? So there's still a lot of questions, but it's one of those things like we're going to have to see how it plays out.
That's right.
In reality. And like I said, this was not something that we made up as a state. No. This is something that has come down from the federal government.
And it wouldn't start until 2027. So it's, you can't donate specifically to get this tax credit for this tax year. So look for more in the future. All right, so we do know today is Friday, and we do know that we passed one bill today, the Medicaid bill. Yep. So I'm going to take a moment, each of you, and just kind of share your concerns or perspective on this bill.
Yeah, so House Bill 2 is a Medicaid bill that we are doing as a result of H.R. 1 and some of the new requirements that have come, again, down from the federal government and in response to that. Now, I think there is this will to cut fraud in Medicaid, to not be spending as much money as a state in Medicaid, and so this is, I think, a product of what the majority wants to see for Medicaid moving forward. So for me, the concerns that remain, just like it does in the budget bill or just like it does with pretty much this entire session, Medicaid is the huge conversation point. Mm-hmm. And I don't understand why we feel the need to go beyond
the federal
benchmark that they're saying. So our state is a receiver state. We have a lot of folks on Medicaid. They need Medicaid. They rely on it. But we are going even farther than what the federal government's making us, and that's really concerning. So we filed a lot of amendments to try to change some of those provisions, and they were not accepted in the House, but hopefully they will be in the Senate. There was one change that affected the rural community that was able to be amended before we passed it out of the House, and it related to non-emergency medical transportation.
Yeah. I don't even know. Yeah, I'm with Rachel. I just don't understand why. Like, why are we making things so much harder for Kentuckians who are already struggling? We did go much further than the federal H.R. 1 put in place for some of the requirements and frameworks that we had to work in. And I don't know. I feel like we're always just trying to say, like, it's like, how poor do you have to be worthy of health insurance, food, right? I mean, that's what it feels like we're constantly having to like ask ourselves. And yeah, I don't want fraud and abuse. And I think, you know, when people stop for a second, you realize that a lot of that fraud and abuse is not from the individual who is on the Medicaid. It's from it's from these organizations and these providers who are billing for things. So it's like, let's go after those individuals and stop penalizing, you know, everybody across the board who needs this.
Right? And saving money by creating more red tape and paperwork is not the way to save money. It doesn't make us healthier.
You know, they definitely anticipate thousands upon thousands of people will be losing their coverage specifically because of the paperwork, not because they don't meet the community engagement requirement.
And that's what's so disheartening about this, right? Is because what I heard today on the floor was, this is not a sustainable model, right? So okay, It's not sustainable because it costs, it does cost us a lot of money, and we are a poor state and all of the things that you said. However, putting a bunch of red tape in place just to knock a bunch of people off, just so you can say, well, this is how we're gonna, make it save money because it's not sustainable. I don't think that's the appropriate model either. So it's really disappointing. And I think, unfortunately, it's one of those situations where once this goes into effect and our colleagues start to hear from their constituents, there might be a change of tune.
Right. So pretty heavyweight week, but I do have a celebration. I had a bill pass through committee, Yay! House Bill 621 about special education caseloads. So look for that on the House floor maybe next week, and then we got to work on the Senate. So our commute is not all business, lots of laughter. I'll say I watched 1.5 episodes of Bridgerton.
You were so excited.
I was so excited. Well, because I just finished the series, The Lincoln Lawyer, and I knew after yesterday I was just done. And I wanted to sit in my easy chair and stream something that would kind of just let me just decompress. So I was so excited because Rachel looked it up, and Bridgerton's last 4 episodes were released yesterday, and so I was awake long enough to watch 1.5. So that was what I did.
I love that. Fair enough. Do you wake up sometimes and the show is still playing and
No.
you're like, whoops?
I don't do that.
That's just me? Okay.
That's just you.
I try to set a sleep timer, but I'm not good at that. A husband usually has to come in and be like, you're done watching. Thank you. Me and Derek have been watching USA Hockey. So I made him record the game from Sunday because I was like, I'm not going to be able to watch that in the morning. So he recorded it, and he was like, don't Google things. Don't be surprised. I have not watched a full hockey game maybe ever.
Right.
I'm like a fan now. I'm here for it. And so after we got done watching it last night, and Dad said, okay, now we need to watch the women's because I'm really enjoying this. This is a great game. So
all
that's
right.
me.
Sarah?
That's how you're doing it. Well, I'm feeling super run down right now. And so I think when I come home, it's like I want to see my family. I want to hear about how their day is. And we all were able to have a really nice dinner together last night, which was really great because all of our schedules have been really kind of chaotic. And my husband was like, I feel like I haven't seen you in like 2 days. So he was like, I'm unloading all this information and things on you because I realized I haven't seen you. And we have one of those inflatable hot tubs that you can get from Costco. Just throw it on your back patio. I was like, that seems like a worthwhile investment. So I do like to once in a while go out there and just kind of like soak and relax, but it feels like I can, like the water at 104 is not hot enough to like completely decompress all my stress.
But I bet it helps you sleep better.
I think it does.
Yeah.
I mean, I do that and then I come in and I shower off and, get your jammies on and then either sit on the couch or sometimes I just crawl right into bed. And last night I was feeling so worn down that I didn't even want to watch anything with anybody else. It was just like I needed to just go be by myself.
Right. Yeah. Understood. Well, we hope you have enjoyed this episode of the Carpool Chat. We will see you next week.
Today's episode is brought to you by caffeine, because how else are you getting through your work week?